begin. My name's J.G. Thirlwell. I'm a composer from Brooklyn, New York. So I guess the first true love of my life, if you'd like me to discuss that. It's difficult for me to define love in the first place. I think in some ways when I look at some of my relationships, I feel I may have squandered them, like someone that may have squandered millions in the lottery. When I was growing up, I went to an all-boys Catholic school for 12 years. I didn't have a lot of opportunity to meet girls, so I did develop the occasional psychotic crush on girls that I knew, which weren't consummated. I think I had, I was fairly isolated as a youth, spent a lot of time by myself, and maybe didn't always interrelate in the most social of ways. I was also psychotically shy, which I still am, kind of. But the first kind of love relationship I developed probably came about when I had left high school and gone to art school, and I met a girl there. It started as a friendship, and then it turned into a sexual thing and became I think maybe her first relationship too. And it was difficult for me to give myself over totally, because I think I was still looking for options, but there was a really, intense bond that I hadn't felt before. She was also very psychically conscious, and a lot of strange things would happen to her, which I was a little bit skeptical about until I sort of experienced some of them myself. Her and her sister she was about 16 or 17 maybe. Her sister was younger, maybe 14 or 15, I think. And, girls of that age are apparently, quite tuned into, spiritual worlds and stuff. And they had a lot of poltergeist type experiences, banging on the wall, hairbrushes flying around the room and stuff like that. And one day she was kind of quite troubled. She came over to my place and we were in bed, and I asked her what was wrong, and she said that this malevolent spirit had been following her from the train station. And so I'm so skeptical about that stuff. So I said, yeah, sure. And then I felt this thing pass through my body, and it was really terrifying. And then it exited again, and then she said she was telling it to fuck off, and it slowly went away. So, I'd never really experienced that with anyone else. I don't have any religious beliefs, or, I don't know what I believe about that stuff. I believe that there's things that we don't know about, and there's probably parallel dimensions, and that, that this is one state of our consciousness, and we might live on, and our energy lives on. That kind of went on and off for a couple of years, and after I'd moved to London, a little bit too. It never kind of ended. It just sort of ground to a halt, I think it was, there was some magnetism between us. I think, it could partially be a factor of my age. I think it's also a factor of me. Possibly when I'm in my 70s or 80s, I might be able to deal with relationships a bit better. Wanted to keep my options open. I actually made an album a few years ago called Love, All of my albums have 4-letter, 1-syllable titles.
Okay.
And one I released in 2005 was called Love. And in a lot of ways, what I create on my albums tend to foreshadow things that go on in my life.
Yeah.
And I think in some ways that calling an album Love maybe was me saying at this point in my life I'm ready to kind of let that in. But then again, be careful what you wish for, I have to say. Because if anyone really looked at that album and considered that as my worldview on love, they'd say that I'm a sorry individual. I don't want to close any doors here, you know, there could be people watching.
Passionate and still we feel that it could be the very beginning of our relationship, and we've known each other for let's see, more than 20 years. Is that possible? Is it getting close to 30 years? I have to do my math. So of course, you know, with your mate you always see that as a kind of great love story, but I have 2 boys. And I think giving birth to my first son changed a lot about what love means, because you always hear things like unconditional love, you know, that you have unconditional love for your children because you're blood, you know, these are your kids, and you know, no matter what, you will always love them, and yet, you know, you do hear stories of families who are, you know, where mothers don't talk to children and children don't talk to parents, and I think that kind of thing certainly is a very realistic thing. It can happen in someone's life, but I think the true essence of becoming a parent, a mother, is that it's very natural. Like you just immediately, you're meant to love your child. And it doesn't, you don't have to birth your child. So you could be a parent with a child that you adopted, but there's something that's very much part of our chemistry, I think, that just allows you to love a child like you don't love anybody else in the same way. Because you recognize that there's a certain responsibility that you have for this child. But I think all people are capable of love. You know, because I understand what passionate love is. You know, to find somebody who's your match, you know, who's very like-minded with you and who you feel a real connection with. It's also really important not to lose sight. I think there was a writer and his 2 writers, a husband and wife, and the woman wrote an editorial for the New York Times where she said she loved her husband more than her kids. And it was this controversial thing last year. And you know, her point was that, you know, her husband came first, and she had this very passionate relationship with her husband, and of course she loves her kids, but, you know, she weighted it in a way. And personally, I could never do that. Our kids are really included in everything that we do. My husband's a musician and travels a lot, and we travel and work together a lot. And we never excluded the kids. And so I never felt like I had to sacrifice my creativity, for example. You know, at the beginning of the relationship, we worked right from the start together on creative projects, and the relationship and the creative working relationship grew kind of at the same time. So that's when the kids came. It was just that they just came into the fold, kind of thing. So that was fantastic, and I would never. I would never do it differently. Yes, and that can, you know, but you know what the most interesting thing is, and I know you feel this way, is that, you know, when you're in a relationship and the other person is not a creative person, like maybe their business is whatever, you know, but you can love someone who's not you're absolute equal, you know, of course. But I think when you are a creative person, it's really important to be with a creative person.
Yeah.
Because, you know, there's something that, there's a certain understanding and there's a certain kind of personality when you're an artist that not everyone can get, you know. And I think if you're both artists, then you kind of have a built-in understanding of each other. Like you're more willing to accept little quirks about the other person because you know that that's kind of a creative way of thinking. Or I also have this other great expression called the shared eye. Yeah, and if you can walk down the street with someone, it doesn't even have to be it could be your friend or whatever, and you both, like, you know, it's snowing and blah blah blah, and you both notice, you know, the way that the flag is wrapped around the pole and hitting the string is making that sound, and you know, and you both see it and you both hear it and you both comment on it.
Yeah.
You know, this kind of shared.
And sometimes
you know,
you don't even like need to comment because you already know that
exactly.
you both see the same things.
But it's this
that you can really share the work as well. And I feel that's, for me, that's the highest point of like love that you can do. If you're a creative person, it's not only like being able to understand what the other one is doing and being kind of like sharing in that level, but if you really can like also share like physically that you can still create something together, I think that's like one of the highest points for me, how I feel that's.
I think it's there. I mean,
because if you are a creative person and you have the need to do something, and it's almost like giving birth to a child, like every day when you can create something together.
My like greatest love would have to definitely be my husband. I just got married in June 6th, and so we met, and we're kind of an unlikely pair. We're really different, but it's kind of that, like, we're the perfect balance for each other in a weird way. He's very quiet, but like seriously the kindest person that I've like ever met in my entire life. And so when we met, we actually were working. He was working for this really amazing chef in back home. We're from Alabama. And so he was working for this chef, and I was coming in and doing some office work. And I met this guy, and I thought he was seemingly really, really nice, but I didn't know much about him. All I knew was, like, every time we talked, his face would get so red. Like, he would blush like the color of the chair. And so I always knew, we called him Dave G because there are a couple different Daves. And I always knew Dave G would always be the one who had rosy cheeks anytime we talked. So then later I found out that he kind of fancied me or whatever, and I really liked him, but we hadn't spent a lot of one-on-one time together, and I was actually dating somebody else at the time. So that was slowly kind of fizzling, and so I ended up going to dinner, or like drinks and a little snacky whatever, with some friends, and Dave was there, and we just ended up talking, and it was kind of like, oh, okay, now I know what I need to do. Like, it just kind of clicked, and it was the easiest conversation. I felt like I was like totally myself. There wasn't any of that weird initial, like, you're just meeting each other, there's that, you feel the need to say the right thing, or you need to be funny, or you need to be cute right now. It was none of that, and I was 100% myself, and felt like I had just found like my new best friend, and we needed to be hanging out all the time. Like, where have you been all my life? So kind of broke it off with the guy that I was seeing and had been seeing for 3 years. And then Dave and I, we weren't really dating seriously. We were just kind of seeing each other and hanging out with other people, and that kind of grew and blossomed, I guess you could say. But he always knew that I was gearing up to move to New York because I had some a couple projects I was going to audition for and needed to be here. And it was always just part of the deal. He knew I wasn't going to be around, and it was kind of, we're going to just cross that bridge when we get there, sort of thing. So it came time for me to move, and it was, I guess we had been dating less than a year by that point. And so we decided, all right, this is what you want to do. You go do it. And I'll be here. We're going to do the long distance thing. We're going to make this work. He was going to come see me. Like, we had this grand plan that would be like once a month. He would be able to fly up if I couldn't go back. And that worked for like the first 2 months. And then it was just not possible. Life happens, and it's really hard to do. It's really hard to make things work when you're like 800 miles away. But it was just off when we weren't together. It was off. Like, things were happening for me in my career. Like, I was auditioning and I was booking things, or, you know, it was everything that I wanted everything to be, only he was missing, and it just didn't feel right. And I just missed being able to share everything that was happening with him. Like, being able to come home and say, I had the most amazing audition, it went great, or I had the crappiest audition of my life. Let's please sit down and have a glass of wine together and help me forget about that. And it was kind of, that was the turning point for us, where I realized that I depended on him so much and for so many things, to be there for me, like my rock, my shoulder to lean on, and everything, but also like to make me laugh like nobody else knew how to make me laugh. And so I was like, really, I knew that I had to kind of reevaluate things. So we talked and like had that conversation of, where do we go from here? Because I still felt really young, and we're kind of new in this relationship. I didn't want to ask him to give up everything in Birmingham to just move up here because I was like missing him or lonely or whatever. And he was like, let's just give it some time and see what happens. And so we did, and it was about 8 months later, and I ended up being able to go on a trip with he and his family to Hawaii, and he proposed to me in the middle of the ocean, like whipped out a ring, and I was like, oh my gosh. And we decided then that we wanted to never be apart like that anymore. So I was back and forth for like the next 11 months doing shows here, and then going back to Alabama to plan our wedding where we got married. And then right after we got hitched, we like packed up the Penske moving truck and drove up the coast to Williamsburg, where we've been living for the last 5 months. And I'm like so thankful every day to have him in my life, because seriously, he's my best friend, and we connect in a way that I've never connected with anybody before, ever. And I didn't even think that I ever would. Like, I totally was a skeptic. I thought I would always have to be sacrificing one aspect of like that perfect relationship. Like, you can't have it all, kind of thing. And I found it with him, so I'm thankful for that. But
you just know when there is the magic. You just definitely know.
And you can't even really put a finger on it or a name on it as to exactly what it is.
Yeah, it's
a whole different thing. Like, yeah. I mean, in the past, it's like you can have that like passionate, crazy attraction to somebody, but outside of that, like, there's nothing there. Yeah, everything is empty. Yeah. Or you have that crazy, intense friendship.
But then there's that.
But yeah. I'm a better person for having him in my life.
A movie plot. I mean, it seems like something you'd see in a movie. When I was 18, I was a photography student at Parsons School of Design, and I was sitting in Washington Square Park one day, and I was pretty new to the city, and I had my camera with me, and I was just doing my homework, essentially. And it was a beautiful fall day. I remember it was really sunny, and one of those perfect, like, crisp New York City fall days that you just spend all summer looking forward to. And I was sitting alone, and all of a sudden this really tall, skinny, black-haired guy walked over to me and just sat down next to me, and I immediately thought, I'd been in New York City long enough to think that was really creepy, but he said, "Hi," and I was like, "Hi, like, what do you want?" And he said, "My name is Alex, and what's your name? What are you doing?" And so I thought, well, he's really young, and he was my age, and I thought, well, he also seemed kind of new to the city, so maybe he hadn't really yet learned that it's kind of weird in a way to just go up to strangers in New York, especially in the park, and talk to them, unless if you're kind of a creepy dude. And so we started talking, and we just instantly hit it off, and he was a film major at NYU, so we had that in common, the film major and the photography major. And I was a year older, I was a sophomore, he was a freshman. And he was just so easy. It was just so easy to talk to him, and he was so sweet, and he seemed so shy that I couldn't even believe that he had come over to me to talk to me, because he didn't seem like the kind of guy actually that did that. And we decided to go see The Bicycle Thief, which was playing at the Film Forum, which, if you haven't seen it, is this incredibly beautiful old Italian movie. It's very heartbreaking. And we just had this great day, and we exchanged phone numbers, but I don't know, at the time, I guess I wasn't really looking to hang out with people, or just, I was very into my studies, so I didn't call him back for a really long time. But one day I decided to call him back, and we met again, and then we just became friends, and over the years our friendship developed really slowly but steadily, and he was always one of those people that I wouldn't see him for maybe 6 months at a time, but then when we would meet up somewhere beautiful, always like Brooklyn Botanical Garden, we would always plan these great kind of dates where it was like, oh, we're going to go to this beautiful place and just sit on a park bench and talk, and we would just talk for hours and catch up about what we had been doing for the rest of the year, and it was such a funny friendship. And then more years passed. I mean, I'm 30 now, so this is a long time ago. And we would just keep meeting up, and sometimes we would have whole weekends of hanging out all the time, and other times we wouldn't see each other for a year or even talk to each other. And then one time, about 2.5 years ago, we were both single, and we hung out again, and we just realized that we had been thinking about each other so much, and in that we realized that we had never really been so comfortable around anyone as we had been when we were alone and with each other, and that even that all this time had passed, we always kind of hung on to each other's friendship, even when all the other friendships kind of go away in your life or you lose touch with people, but we always kept returning to each other. And we started dating and fell madly in love, and we moved in together after 3 months, to the great, stress of all of our families, thinking that was insane. And we've been together now for 2.5 years, and we're both very in love. And he's definitely my soulmate, and I think he feels the same way. So, oh, and the amazing thing is that when we finally got together, he showed me his journal, because he's always kept a journal, and he had an entry from the day that we met, and it was the most beautiful entry. It was October 15th, 1998, and it said, "Today I saw this girl in the park, and she had long brown hair, and she was wearing, oh God, a denim skirt, a big, and a turtleneck, and I knew if I didn't talk to her, I would regret it for the rest of my life." And it was just an incredible entry. Yeah.
That's beautiful.
Yeah, actually, that was one of the things that, as I said, we got closer over the years, and I found that he was the person, and it was very equal. It was kind of like Harry Met Sally, in the fact that they would get together, like we would get together and have these extremely real conversations that we couldn't have with other people. And for our relationship, it was very confessional. And I had been engaged at one point, and I was having a really hard time, with that. And he was the person I could always go to and just tell everything utterly truthfully to, and not feel judged, you know, and he would give me wonderful advice. And the thing is what's really amazing is sometimes, you know, when you're a woman, you have those guy friends and you know that they like you, you know, and you know that maybe they're not giving you the best advice because they have other motivations and intentions. But with Alex, I never knew that he liked me. I never knew that he had any feelings for me at all. So, and if he had, I mean, he was just a really good friend, you know, like a good friend in every sense of the word. He was just really supportive and giving me great advice and never judging me when I would tell him anything. So we just had such open communication all the time. So I would tell him everything about every guy I was with or interested in, or mistakes I had made and problems I had gotten into, and he would do the same. You know, he was living with a girl for a while, and same thing. And it was amazing because we could talk about how wonderful it is to be in a relationship and then the problems of being in a relationship. And so now to actually be in a relationship with that person, and you've already had these conversations, so it's like, I already know in a way how he feels about being in a relationship, and I think maybe that's why it's easier for him to be in this one, because I already know how he really, like, he likes being single. Like, he's the kind of guy that actually prefers to be single. He loves his freedom, and he's very independent, but it's the kind of thing that you might not feel comfortable telling your girlfriend that, you know, if you hadn't been friends with her first. But I already knew him so well, and so it's informed our relationship.
What was the moment? Like you say, you kind of said, oh, and then we started dating and fell madly in love, but kind of what was the moment where you thought, oh my God, like I'm in love with this person?
There was an actual moment. I was hanging out with him, and I was single, and I just was looking at him, and I just realized, I just kind of started hyperventilating, and I was just like, what is going on? Like, what? And it was very confusing, and I wasn't sure, but like, I knew that I was very, you know, I knew I kind of had to say something. I mean, it became so obvious to me in a way that I had to confess. And it wasn't until I said to him, I think I am totally in love with you. You know, I think I might have always have been, you know, and that he finally felt comfortable to say it back to me, because he was so afraid of losing my friendship that I've had guys before say to me, oh, I think I'm in love with you, and then you can't really be friends with them anymore, you know? And so, I mean, if you don't feel the same way. But when I put that out there, thank God he said it. Because I mean, I could have ruined the friendship, but I had to say it. I was really grateful. Because I could have gone really bad, and then I would have lost out on a friend, a really good one.
I'm Alexa Wilding, and I'm a musician and a writer, but mostly now a writer of music. And it's funny that you brought up love, because I mean, I just got married, and obviously that's my big love story. But being in this apartment, since this was my old apartment, it sort of got me thinking about the city. Heather and I, on our way over here, we're talking about some of our favorite songs, like really stupid songs. And her boyfriend Alex said that Feliz Navidad is like one of his favorite songs because it's totally silly. And then I was thinking that one of my favorite songs is New York, New York by Frank Sinatra, which of course is the most cheesy song in the world. But when it comes on, I'm just filled with happiness. And I'm realizing that I love New York. And I know that's probably really corny because everyone wears I Love New York t-shirts, but I was born and raised here. So for me, this is kind of, besides having an absolutely wonderful husband and friends like Heather, who I love, and Paola, my big love story is kind of with this city, if that makes any sense. Because, I don't know, it's kind of like the backdrop for everything that's happened in my life, and for all my songs. They all take place on these streets, especially downtown where I grew up. And
last night, and we just moved to Midtown, which is totally weird to me because it's not a neighborhood that I really see myself having anything in common with at all. But it's been nice to be incognito. But last night I went to meet a little friend of mine. She's 16, and I knew her when she was a really little girl. And we met at John's Pizza on Bleecker Street, right by Jones Street. And it made me so happy to be down there with the snow and all the kids, and it was getting dark and the lights were going up, and it was just that feeling of complete, utter love for a place, and realizing that if someone asked you to show a picture of yourself, I feel like I could show a picture of that street. I know that sounds a little goofy, but I really feel that way, because when I go downtown around Bleecker and Charles and the West Village, even though it's changed a lot, and even though it's very sort of hoochie mama now with all the meatpacking people, it's still my village, I feel like. So I don't know, when I think about love, I think about black boots and snow and all the little buildings and the ghosts of folk music past. It's my own little village that doesn't really exist anymore, but it does for me in my head, especially around 5 o'clock when the sun starts setting. To me, that is just, it's kind of better than Paris, actually. So I was thinking about that in terms of love. And the fact that I can't really walk down a street in this city without pointing to a curb or a stoop or a tree or a cafe without there having been some event that happened there. So I always wonder what would happen if I moved somewhere else and be somewhere where I have no connection, no scenery that means something to me. It might be a good thing,
My name is Ebony Booth, and I've been thinking about the idea of talking about the love of my life, and I don't necessarily know that I've had one. I know that I've had lots of amorous moments, and I know that I've had times when I certainly was sure that I was in love in the midst of it. But I think now, kind of looking back on it, I don't think I've had a love of my life. So I thought what I would do instead was talk about what I envision, what kind of love I think would be really good and really kind of fulfilling for me. My parents aren't together. My parents were never married. I'm not totally convinced they were even really in love with each other. So I think a lot of my notions of love and romantic love are kind of informed by movies and televisions and books, and I have a really active imagination. So I think, I've always had kind of this idea that I would just meet someone and there wouldn't have to be, we wouldn't have a normal love. We wouldn't have to date. We wouldn't have to kind of court each other. It would just be really like instantaneous and really instant, and everything that was like kind of special about us, we would be able to kind of just get right away, And then as you get older and as you date more and more, you realize that it doesn't really work that way. I want the love of my life to be someone who just kind of gets me and speaks my language, and there'll always be that kind of person who just wants to be around me all the time. I mean, that's how I feel when I feel really enchanted by someone else, I want to be around them all the time, and it's like Christmas morning, it's like all the time I have with them is like the best birthday gift ever. Still kind of being in search for this love that I'm sure is out there. I haven't lost hope or anything, but I just haven't found it yet. So, I guess I've had those I've had 2 relationships that felt like, like they really kind of like rock you to the core. You think that, I guess that's like the kind of irrational part of love. I've had 2 times when I didn't feel like, I could ever be without this person. And I remember thinking at the time, I guess this is what it feels like. I guess this is what everyone's been talking about. But I guess it wasn't really until afterwards. It wasn't until later that I realized that I don't know. I think love is supposed to be easy. I mean, I know things about it are difficult, but when I think about like how just kind of accepting and how kind of like flexible the platonic love I have feels, or the love I have for my family, and how I don't even realize it's there. I don't really have to work at it. I just always know it's kind of there with me. You know, I've never had that with someone romantically. You know, it always feels like there's this work and there's this strife and there's like all of these like hoops to jump through. And I never really have had an instance where I just felt like comfortable and kind of easy and like, you know, it was just, I think it was too hard. I was like, this is too hard to be love. Right? This is something else. I don't know what this is, but you know, I don't know. I hear people tell stories about realizing that, you know, that they've really fallen in love with someone and realizing that, you know, they've kind of found someone who's going to kind of stick with them through it, you know, and how there is something kind of like relaxed about it, like relaxed and exciting and scary, but at the same time it feels like, you know, good under your skin or something.
You just know it.
You just kind of know it, right? I mean, and I have moments where like, you know, I've had too much to drink. I'm like, oh, this is definitely love. But I think afterwards I realized that, you know, it might have been a fierce adoration or like a, you know, this fire. But I don't know that it's something that felt like reciprocated and necessary, you know. I kind of want a love that feels like I need it, you know. Like it's a vital part of my life. And I don't think I've had that experience yet.
Men don't understand me. They think I talk too much. They shouldn't listen to what I say. They should listen to what I mean. What I say is ha ha ha. What I mean is beauty and poetry. What I say is gibble gabble gibble. What I mean is I am a lost soul. Study my 100 eyes. I forgot. All right. I want to talk about love, and there is a different kind of a love. One was when my son was born, and I did not feel love that I felt when he was in my arms, and they have put him to my breast, and he was feeding on milk, and I felt very, very strange. I looked down at this creature and I was shocked. He was my little baby, where I did not feel that love yet. Later on, few weeks have passed, and I have started developing this unconditional love for a little baby, especially when he was showing feelings. He couldn't talk yet, but in a way, when he had something wrong with him and he was crying, and that was pissing me off, and so I would shake him and he would start crying even more, but from the heart, like I hurt his feelings, and I really felt so bad that how could I hurt someone that I love so much. And that love grew bigger and bigger, and this little boy is a teenager now, where he goes through this 16 years and gives me a very difficult time. I cry every day. He talks to me really badly, and I scream back at him, and I almost want to give up being a mother, and the back voice comes back to me saying, gosh, I love him so much, I will not give up. And I will make sure when I am done with my son, he's gonna be, for example, he's gonna be flying out of the nest. He is going to definitely have wings, and he will learn how to fly in a very stabilized way. The second kind of love that I always thought that was a real love is lost. And I want to talk about my boyfriend, where you see someone and from the first moment you're in love with them and you want them, and that's it, you can't be without them, and the first hug is just like amazing. You want to see them every day, you want to have children with him. It's amazing love, which called lust. And I always thought that was what it is called love, but my boyfriend and I met, and our love grew from and developed. We liked each other, but we did not saw each other and grabbed and said, wow, I want you, you are so sexy. Well, we did that, but it wasn't like when you're young and you want to like kill yourself if they're gonna break up with you, or you want them every minute. So, and eventually it grew into a big love, but it took 2 years. And so it's from the beginning, it's little moments that you do together, and you talk, and the things that you do together, and traveling, and get to know each other. It's so amazing what love can grow into. That kind of a love, if anybody will experience, they're lucky people. So of course there's many different loves, and I screw up on my monologue, which you did not film.
We have it in a tape.
Oh, you do?
The story is the most important without even the picture, so we have it on the recording.
Yeah, that's correct. So that's my two little stories that I have experienced. I have many other love stories, but of course it wouldn't be fun if I'll tell you all of them right now.
Like I said, I was attracted to the idea of saying one sentence about love in kind of in a cryptic way, because I can't divulge really anything about my life. But I found out recently a story of a past life that I thought was pretty good, and that is I was meant to marry an Egyptian king, and then he died. That's the story. So in this world, in this life, I'm looking for that figure. That's the subtext. Am I turning red? I'm blushing now.
No, you're not blushing.
That's all? That's it?
That's it. Bye.